Hello everybody, my name is Alex and welcome back to AI Trades. This is our week 2 recap where we're going to cover everything that happened over the last week, a little bit of the first week, and just show what our overall position is at right now and cover what things are going to look like over the next week, supposedly. Things are always subject to change. For anybody who's joined the channel recently, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, so I'll cover what the challenge is, some of the details that cover it. I'll talk about some news that's going to be coming up in the future with the channel specifically. We're going to cover all of the information over what happened with the graph above me, what Claude's recap for the week is, and then we will finish off by covering any comments that came up in the shorts that I released throughout the week or any of my videos. So for anybody new to the channel, starting off with the challenge, we give AI $100 to use in the stock market however it sees fit to try to make $1 million as fast as possible. It's an extremely high goal. I'm not even sure that we would ever be able to reach it, but it's just something fun that I want to do. The AI is not able to make trades on its own in the market. Instead, what's going on is the AI is using its resources to determine a good position for us to get into. And then I provide any information necessary just in case it's a little bit off. I'll give it screenshots or up-to-date data because sometimes it's a little bit off. And then the AI will give me a decision whether to hold cash or to buy into a position or sell a position if we have one. And then I'll do whatever it says to do on my Weeple brokerage account. And then I will report back to the AI exactly what happened, whatever transaction took place, the exact amount that we bought and sold at. And then the AI can update our portfolio to keep track of everything. Over the first week, a few people did ask about me giving out the settings or how I have things set up. And for the most part, I'm not really going to go into any of those details, but I'll let you know that it's a lot simpler than some people may think. I don't have any special plugins. I'm not using any servers or special commands or anything. I basically just gave, in this case, Claude, a big long prompt that says exactly what its role is, how it's going to execute everything. And then I just talk to it every day and it tells me what it wants to do. And hopefully if the AI doesn't have any long-term problems, then we'll be able to run this through all the way until either the AI loses all the money or we achieve the $1 million goal. Of course, if you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, let me know in the comments down below or watch out for my shorts throughout the week. Comment on those as well. And I will cover anything at the end of my longer format video next Saturday, similar to this one. So starting off with where we're at, you can see up above me, we have a graph. It starts off on the very first day of our challenge. And for a few days, we didn't do anything. Claude wanted to hold on to the money. We made our first purchase. It went up a little bit, came back down. Claude sold out and we came out ahead, but not as much money as we could have gotten. And then we made another trade and once again went up, it went down, and we sold at a very good position there. And you can see that we started off with $100. We have $133.89 in total portfolio value. Our net worth is $118.02 because I am keeping track of how much money I'm going to owe in short-term capital gains taxes at the end of the year. And totally, we have gained 33.89%. And in 2 weeks, boy, that is pretty darn good. I'm super excited about that. This could beat my normal portfolio in a couple of months if things keep going this way. On my right-hand side, which should be your left hand on the screen, I believe, we can see a week 2 recap, AI Trades Challenge, where Claude is going to cover everything that we've been through so far and what the next week looks like for us. So we're going to go ahead and read through that together real quickly here. Similar to the graph that I was just pointing out above me, we can see our current status has us at $133.89. Our tax liability reserve is $15.87. Our total portfolio value, the same as cash on hand, is $133.89. And our net worth, as I said a moment ago as well, is $118.02. Our progress to $1 million is more like 0.13%, but I think that it's fine that it says 0.01%. Once we hit $200 in total value, then that will change to 0.02. And I think that would be a pretty big day for us. Scrolling down a little bit, we have our portfolio holdings. We are 100% in cash. This last Thursday, Claude decided to sell out of our position. So everything that we're holding on to right now is cash. We don't have any positions over the weekend. And so far out of the first 2 weeks, it seems like Claude probably is going to do that every week. Try to get into a position sometime early in the week, get out in the middle or the late part of the week, hold money over the weekend. I don't know if that'll always be the case, but so far that's what it seems like. Next, we have our realized gains and losses. We made our number 1 trade in the first week for QUBT. We got in at $10.69 a share. We sold for $10.98 a share. We got a total of 9.35453 shares when we got into that, and we made a total profit of $2.68. And you can see on the graph above me there that's kind of what I was talking about, where it went up and then it went back down and we sold out. We could have made $10 or $15 if we sold at the top there, but Claude wanted to wait and see where things went. And unfortunately, we lost money, or we left money on the table. We didn't lose money. We made a little bit, but we didn't make as much as we could have. For our second trade that we made just this last week, we got into RGTI. We got in at $16.22 a share, and we sold at a whopping $21.14 a share. We got 6.33007 shares on that transaction, and we made $31.16 profit, which is huge. And the total that we've made in profit so far is $33.84. Next up, we have our honest review. So just a few quick bulletins that we want to go through here. On Monday, May 18th, we held cash all day long. The entire watch list was deep in the red. RKLB, Gap, and Trap at open rejected correctly. And the Russell 2000 was down over 1%. Yields were at a 1-year high. It was the right call to stay out. On Tuesday, May 19th, an Iran attack was called off by Trump, creating a brief morning rally, and Claude evaluated IONQ and rejected it due to a share count problem at $48 a share. Basically, we would only be able to get basically 2 shares, and it didn't like that for the amount of money we can make if we were able to get like 4 or 5 shares, which I find interesting because if it was, if you make 10%, you make 10%. It doesn't really matter how much, we could buy a $5,000 stock and only get a small fraction of a share, but if it makes 10% that day, so do we. So I don't know why that was a problem, but Claude's in control. It says that it switched to RGTI and waited patiently through brutal morning sell-offs, and Nvidia flipped green at 12:45 p.m., in which we deployed the full $102.67 that we had on cash on hand at the time into RGTI at $16.22 a share and got 6.33007 shares. On Wednesday, May 20th, RGTI crashed to $15.85 at open and tested our 1575 stop loss. Actually, the night before in the after-hour markets, it dipped below the 1575 stop loss position that Claude wanted to sell at if we ever went under. But unfortunately, I don't have access. Well, I guess fortunately in this case, I don't have access to the after-hour market. So even though it dipped below it in the after-hour markets, we couldn't sell. It came right back up above the 1575 stop loss position before the markets opened up. But it did still get quite close to it in the morning. Buyers stepped in, and there was a dramatic V-shaped recovery to $17.21 intraday, which was great. It held us in a green position for the rest of the day. We held through the Nvidia earnings that came out that night after close, and Nvidia reported a blowout of $1.87 EPS versus the $1.78 that was expected. And they made $81.62 billion in revenue versus the $79.2 billion expected. Guided Q2 to $91 billion and held overnight, which really helped us out that Nvidia made over $1 billion more than they were expecting to. On Thursday, May 21st, we woke up to RGTI at $20.98 a share, already up 29%, and Claude decided to sell immediately. And by the time, similar to what I was talking about before, where Claude makes the decisions, I enact them, and then report back to Claude in this case, Claude tried to sell at $20.98. By the time I was able to make the sell, it sold for $21.14. And so there was that little bit of a gap up, which worked out really great for us. So far, it was the best fill of the challenge. The portfolio jumped from $102.67 to $133.89 in 48 hours, which again, it's amazing. Great trade. We booked $31.16 in profit on trade number 2. Now on Friday, we had already pulled out our money, but RGTI continued running up to $27.79 before fading back to, it says $18 to $19 by close. I think it was still a little bit higher than that. That's just one of those things where the AI is a little bit off. I think it was at like $24 or $25 at close. But either way, we're out of the position, so I wasn't too worried about correcting Claude on that. If Claude wants to get back into RGTI in the future, I'll just make sure that Claude has the accurate information at the time that we make such a decision. Claude stayed in cash and resisted the temptation to chase, which is brilliant, and identified for next week to look at QBTS for D-Wave as a primary trade number 3 target ahead of us. Apparently, there is going to be some event that's going to happen on June 1st called Investors Day, sponsored by D-Wave, which is a quantum computing company. And that is the target that Claude wants to kind of focus on for the next catalyst. potentially into next week. One of my favorite things about this challenge that I've been doing with Claude so far is we've only made 2 trades so far, but it seems like each time Claude is reflecting on its own. I didn't tell it to do this. Claude is reflecting on its own what went well, what went bad, and what we can change in the future, which is great because it means it's learning how to do this challenge better. And so it says what went right. Everything about trade 2 was cleaner than trade 1. The entry was patient and well-timed. We waited through a brutal Monday and Tuesday morning before deploying. The thesis was clear. The pre-NVIDIA earnings drift into a high beta quantum name. The exit was decisive, selling into the morning excitement rather than waiting for a fade. And we applied the lesson from QUBT, which was our first trade, and it paid off. And yes, it did. We definitely left some money on the table. We could have made more money, but we had an excellent day. And just as I said that, one honest regret is that RGTI ran from our $21.14 exit all the way to $27.79 the following morning, a move that we completely missed, which always stings a little bit when you see that. You exit a position and then it keeps on going. The scale out strategy would have kept us partially in that move. Going forward on trade number 3 and beyond, we will sell 50% at first target and let the remaining 50% ride with a trailing stop. That single adjustment could meaningfully improve our returns on big winners, which is like I was saying a moment ago. Claude is learning how to do this challenge better. And I didn't tell it to do 50% or a scale out strategy of any kind. It just made it up on its own, which I'm sure is a real strategy that investors actually use. But again, like I'm not telling Claude to do any of this. Claude is making this up on its own. So brilliant. I'm absolutely loving how well things are going for us so far. The bigger picture, we started week 2 with $102.67, and we ended with $133.89 in cash, a 30.4% weekly return and a 33.89% total return from a $100 starting point. 2 trades, 2 wins, 0 losing trades. The strategy is proven and the discipline is building. And yes, it is. No, I can't tell you how happy I am that things are going so well on this challenge. I have no idea how things are going to go in the future, and it's part of a fun challenge I'm doing, so it's okay if Claude ends up losing all the money. but I can't tell you how well things are going and how happy it makes me. Looking into next week, Claude is already plotting things ahead. Keep in mind, things are subject to change. We're on a 3-day weekend right now with Memorial Day on Monday. I'll check with Claude today a few times, tomorrow a few times, and on Memorial Day a few times, and Claude very well may change their position. But currently, the week 3 game plan, the QBTS setup. The primary target is QBTS with the D-Wave Quantum. The thing I was talking about a moment ago, on June 1st, there's going to be like an Investors Day situation at the New York Stock Exchange, which could be a really good catalyst for the quantum computing world. The entire thesis in one sentence. D-Wave is hosting its first ever Investor Day at the New York Stock Exchange on June 1st, a known scheduled catalyst that we can position ahead of, exactly like we did with RGTI ahead of the NVIDIA earnings. So we'll see how things play out, but it's already got a plan on how to get ahead of a catalyst and then hopefully sell on the excitement like we did with RGTI last week. What makes QBTS compelling? The first ever Investor Day at the New York Stock Exchange. Companies don't do this unless they have something exciting to show. The dual platform quantum company. It's the only one offering both annealing and gate model systems. I don't know what any of that means. There's 13 analyst buy ratings with consensus price target of $35 for QBTS. QBTS recently acquired Quantum Circuits Incorporated, expanding their technology roadmap significantly. And they're currently selling off with the rest of the quantum sector after this week's big run, potentially a discount entry for Tuesday, but we'll have to wait and see. As with any trade that we can possibly make, there's always going to be some risks, and Claude points that out for us, that the entire quantum sector had a massive week and is now in the profit-taking mode, just like we did. QBTS could continue selling off on Tuesday before finding support, so we may not do anything on Tuesday. We'll have to wait and see. And Investor Day could disappoint if commercial traction isn't demonstrated. So if they don't bring anything good to the table at the Investors Day or anything that's exciting enough to drive up the markets, then it may not be a good catalyst for us to use anyways. And these are all very real things that we have to take into account. You know, we don't live in a fantasy land where everything goes up all the time. So I'm really glad that Claude is at least aware of the negative impact that could affect, next week in our challenge overall. Claude's idea of the calendar for the next week is that Monday, May 25th, is Memorial Day, so the markets are closed. We can't do anything. Tuesday, May 26th, the first trading day, we access a QBTS entry point, possibly. On Wednesday, May 27th, Marvel Technology earnings and the AI semiconductor catalyst could potentially help things out. On Thursday, May 28th, GDP second estimate and more earnings will be coming out. On Friday, May 29th, PCE inflation data, important Fed signal will be coming out. And then on Sunday, June 1st, is when the D-Wave Investor Day. It'll be happening from 1 to 4 p.m. I didn't know before that June 1st is on a Sunday. So that means that whatever happens on Sunday, it'll be over the weekend when the markets are closed. So if we're already in a position at that point, we're going to be kind of at the choice of the winds of the market to be able to see if we're in a good position or a bad situation. Even if things look, okay, if things sell off in Monday morning, we won't be able to do anything until the market's actually open. I'm not able to trade in the pre-market. So we'll have to wait and see how things go. Subscribe if you want to come along for the ride. Claude's entry plan is to watch QBTS Tuesday morning carefully. If the quantum sell-off from Friday has continued into a clean technical support level, then Claude will deploy. If it's already bouncing hard at open, Claude will wait for a better entry point. And the June 1st catalyst gives us roughly 1 full week to be into a position. There's no need to rush into Tuesday if the setup isn't clean. And so far, Claude has shown really good discipline on not getting into a position just because that's part of the challenge, and has had several days of holding on to cash. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if on Tuesday Claude decides to hold on to cash and wait for a better position. But it says that if everything looks right, it will be planning on deploying on Tuesdays. So we'll be seeing that soon. There's a secondary watch list that Claude is watching out for just in case things don't look so good for the other options. So there's RGTI, which is the trade we did just this last week. Says that if it pulls back to the $17.50 to $18 range, then it becomes an interesting position again. There's QUBT, which is the very first trade that we made, trading back near our original entry price. Potential re-entry if things don't look so good up above. And then there's the Marvel Technology, MRVL, an AI semiconductor play around Wednesday earnings. Just for fun, I have been asking Claude to give us a time estimate on how things could look for us if things go well. There's God mode that we could potentially reach our $1 million goal by the end of the year. Which isn't going to happen, but the God mode more or less is that we just make all the best trades. We get 50 to 100% once or twice a week, every week without fail, and we never make any bad decisions at all. And if that does happen, then we could be at the $1 million mark by the end of the year. That's definitely not going to happen. There's an optimistic view where it could be mid to late next year. And again, this is just like we're making 20 to 30, 40% trades 3-4 times a month without fail, maybe a couple hiccups here and there, but, things are going really well. And again, that's not going to happen either. The realistic category, at least according to Claude, is that we could be done with this challenge by mid 28 to mid 29. And that's assuming that we get mixed results, that we have fairly good trades most of the time, but we occasionally lose out on some things, and we average in the ballpark of 10 to 15% gains per trade. And then there's the conservative option that Claude thinks that it could take up into 2030 or beyond. And my personal opinion is it'll be well beyond 2030 that we ever reach $1 million with this challenge. But Claude thinks it's realistic that we could get there beforehand. So subscribe once again if you want to come along for the ride. And just to recap, we have the current net worth of $118.02, up 18% net anyways, from our $100 starting point in 2 weeks. The compounding has begun, and every week that we execute like this week, the timeline compresses. So, obviously with compounding, the more money that we can get in our cash on hand, the more ability we have to make more money. Things will move faster and faster over time because we're talking about percentages in the market, right? So if we had $10,000 and we were up 18%, that would be $1,800 that we could be up. So things will compound over time. Things will move faster. Week 3 starts on Tuesday. So let's go get trade number 3. And we're going to have to wait a couple days because today's Saturday and we're on a 3-day weekend, but I will be uploading shorts on weekdays when the market is open. So, don't expect anything on Monday. If I have anything come out on Monday, it won't be an update on the challenge because the markets are closed, but you can expect Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday updates on what happened. And to address some of the comments that we got throughout the week, Basically, there wasn't a whole lot of questions or anything like that this last week, but there's a few comments that we can cover. A couple days ago, Buck Wildberry said that he really loves the challenge that we're going for here, but my short videos are way too long. I'm really pushing that 3-minute mark on YouTube of how long a short can be, and it's because I have a curse where I just talk too much. I've gotten compliments for a long time now that I should be making videos, which is kind of part of the reason I'm doing this, and one of my curses is that I can talk too much. So that's kind of why those videos go on for as long as they do, but I'm trying to cram in as much information as possible. So I'm sorry to say I won't be making 1-minute shorts anytime soon. They are always going to be probably right about 3 minutes. Horst Wenzel 318, one of my longest subscribers so far. The channel's only existed for a couple of weeks, but he's been here since day one. Suggested that on my shorts that I could put up the status of where we're at in the first 1/3 of the videos moving forward. And he's totally right. I should have been doing that this whole time, especially when my shorts begin. There's a lack of anything happening above my head in the shorts for the first few seconds of the video, the first 15, 20 seconds. So that would be a good time to put those up there so that people can see where we're at before I go off in my long detail about what happened. And other than general excitement, I haven't really gotten a whole lot of comments other than the couple things that I just covered. But several people on YouTube and TikTok have asked if they can invest in my venture of what's going on here. And so that could mean two things, which I don't always know when it's just like a 1-sentence comment. If they're asking if they can invest in me and this challenge that I'm doing, there's not really any way to do that right now. Maybe in the future, if I get ad revenue or there are generous donations from people, then maybe that could be somehow funneled into the challenge. I'd really like to do it that way. My initial thought was that I would put it directly into the challenge with Claude or whatever AI that we're running with, but I think that that could really dilute the challenge. Like, if I get $100 in ad revenue and donations and that, defeats the earnings, the gains that we made with the challenge, then I feel like it could really dilute the challenge going from 100 to $1 million. So I'm going to find another way to go about that. I was thinking my default position right now is I could just put it all into the S&P 500 and we could see if the S&P 500 from donations and ad revenue is able to get to $1 million before before the challenge does. Both are all of these things are long in the distant future. They're probably not going to happen, but I just want to, find a way to keep that money all in the challenge rather than putting it into my pocket. But then also people could mean that they want to invest in me in a way that they can see a return on investment. And I don't have any idea of any way that that could work. If you have a suggestion on things that I could do to make it so people could invest in me and then be able to see a return on investment for themselves, I would love to hear about any suggestions you have. And then, of course, the last thing is people could mean that they want to do the challenge just like I'm doing. And while though I'm not sharing the prompt or the settings of things that I have set up with Claude or any AIs in the future on how you can do it yourself, you totally still could do it yourself. When I made a prompt, I definitely played around with it. I asked Claude, I asked Grok, I asked GBT, refine this. I want to change this. I want to make sure that it's a prompt that Claude's going to understand. And so those are good ways that, you could kind of define your own prompt on how aggressive or conservative you might want an AI to be, making sure that the prompt is working specifically for that particular AI model. But you could absolutely, definitely, if you have Webull or any, there's Robinhood, you can trade stocks on Cash App. If you have any access to a stock brokerage app of any kind where you can put money onto, you could just ask AI just for fun. Hey, I have $100. How should I spend it in the market to make money? But that would be my suggestions for it. But that basically covers everything. Subscribe if you want to come along for the ride. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you guys on Tuesday with a fresh update on where we're at.